You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hello, People Centric leaders. It's Don Harkey here. And our team has been talking about different topics for this podcast. And one of the topics that really struck to us is something that happens quite a bit. And this has happened multiple times. This is one of those things that if you're a client and you're listening to this, you might think the song is about you, because you might think, wow, this is very similar to something that happened to us. But actually, this is something that's actually a fairly common occurrence. And here is what happens. So we work with organizations. A lot of people have asked me, like, do you guys just have a podcast? Is that the only thing you do? No, that's not the only thing we do. We actually work with companies and organizations. That's why we have all these great stories to share. Our day is filled with working within organizations, trying to help them execute strategic plans, trying to help them engage their employees, all the fun, exciting things. And sometimes we will meet with an executive team and say, how are things going? And they will share numbers with us, and things aren't going so hot. And we'll look at it and say, we're missing some numbers. We have some things we really need to fix. There are some real problems in the organization that are very serious that threaten the future of the organization. And then we will go meet with the employees of the same organization. And maybe the employees haven't been told all of this stuff, but they feel it. Employees are very good. They're intuitive. They feel like there seems to be a lot of pressure. There seems to be a lot of problems. Seems like we could be doing better. Are we doing as well as we could be doing? And most importantly, a lot of them ask, how can I get in the game? How can I get involved so that I can improve things? So then we will lead a retreat, and we will pull everybody together, and we will talk to the executive team and say, okay, we've got to bring these problems to the employees, and we're going to solve those things. And the employees, we're going to bring them in, and we get all ready to do this. And then the owner beforehand thinks to themselves, you know what? I just want to be positive. I want to have this to be a positive experience for everybody. I don't want it to be negative. I don't want to be gloom and doom. So they show up and they say, everything is awesome. Isn't that the song? What movie is that from, guys? What movie is that from?
It's from the Lego movie.
The Lego movie.
I believe it's Chris Pratt, who's the voice of the Lego guy, who sings that song.
Okay.
I thought you just made it up. I didn't even know that was from a movie. I was like, Don's on to something. Somebody capture this. I hope we recorded this.
It's a catchy song.
Children that have definitely seen that movie. Come on.
Right now, in the DVD player, we have the original Mary Poppins. That's where we are right now. So no, I mean, I guess we got to get that one. But.
So Matt just entered the 1960s on his movie watching list.
You know what? Sometimes the 60s sounds pretty good, but everything is awesome. Go ahead, Don.
It's a great song. It's a great song. So then they're touting everything is awesome, everything is great, and then what happens is they give this candy-coated, watered-down description of what's happening inside the organization, and the employees kind of listen and they smile and they're like, oh, well, okay, I guess if everything is fine, then I guess we can keep doing what we've always been doing, and then they're going to keep getting what they've always been getting. So this is the point that we want to talk a little bit about today. Positivity, good or bad. Like sometimes it's good, but sometimes it can be bad. We actually have a great series of experts with us. We have Philip from our team here. Philip, who has definitely seen the Lego movie and knows what actors are out there. Weren't there more than one Lego movie, Philip?
I feel like there are several. It's always on planes, that you're like half awake and half asleep. And so the Lego movie, there's not a lot of substance, but it just keeps you awake because there's so much flashing and bright colors. So that's been my experience. Always on an airplane, 35,000 feet over who knows what place. Matt also referenced the Inside Out, which again, kids movies, they're so deep sometimes, and gave the example of what was it? Bobo, the friend, the imaginary friend. Matt, your example was good.
Bing Bong.
Bing Bong, that's right. So close. Bobo, Bing Bong. Having this hard time, and Joy was running around like, hey, play a game. Like, hey, let's have some fun. And it really took sadness and appropriate response to be like, hey, no, like I'm in this with you and this is not good. I'm just saying things. I didn't answer any question, but yes, Philip, I'm here and I love Legos as well.
And if you know Philip, if you've been a long time listener of this, you've heard Philip, and Philip likes to laugh while he's sharing things. And it's true, if he takes a StrengthsFinder assessment, isn't positivity one of your top 5 strengths?
It is my 5th strength.
It's your fifth strength that's out there. And so
I don't like
Philip
to
is,
brag about it, though. I really don't like to brag about it.
I don't like to brag about it, as he laughs and smiles in front of you. If
Oh,
you're
crap.
watching us on YouTube, you're seeing Philip smile right here. And if you watch Philip ever on YouTube, you've seen him smile. Positivity is a great strength. And we're going to zoom back in on that. Well, let's talk about it right now since we're up here. Philip, we had a great conversation about positivity because if you do, by the way, I'm going to back up. StrengthsFinder, if you're not catching up, is a great assessment. It's offered by the Gallup organization. You can take it. There's a lot of different strengths books that you can go buy, and you buy those books and it comes with the code and you go online and you can learn what your top 5 strengths are. And they list those different strengths. And some of the strengths are fairly common and some of the strengths are less common. And I think positivity is one of those that is less common amongst people. So a lot of times people misinterpret positivity. So what does positivity mean as a strengths in terms of StrengthsFinder, Philip?
Yeah, I try to simplify. I think even on our team, we pick on each other. Mostly it's Matt picking on me about what positivity looks like and how it's expressed. And I think sometimes people can, and it is done this way if we talk about toxic positivity, where everything is fine all the time. Like the Lego song, everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. But I would say positivity really, if you tie back into Gallup of this idea that people always need hope, I think as someone who's gone through really hard things, all people go through hard things. I think positivity for me is looking and celebrating the things that are good, even when things are terrible and wrong. And even if it just is only terrible and wrong, knowing with hope that there's something better ahead. I mean, that doesn't mean you're blind to the hard things in life, but I think knowing that, like, with compassion, with stability, I'm going to trust that hope is always a good thing to keep around. And when I know more, I think that's when I probably will speak more critically of things if I have more information. But knowing that in our world, usually we speak very critically when we know only a little, I would rather have a little information and speak well rather than have a little information and speak poorly. I think that's just where I tend to go to.
That is so well said, Philip. That was awesome. That was fantastic. Uh, that was awesome description of positivity. Matt's now laughing because Matt's the anti-positive person on our team. He's always the.
No, I'm not, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that part. Matt's.
He means me because weirdly, negativity is all top 5 of my strengths.
Negativity. It's not even, isn't one of the StrengthsFinder strengths. It just shows up. I don't know what Diana has said
All
to
5.
make it give an answer that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. Diana's darkness there. Yeah. So we're going to talk about, like, when do we use positivity the right way? You've already heard we've got Diana on this, and Diana, you can distinguish from anything she says is not going to be positive. If you hear a positive comment, it's probably Philip. If you hear a negative comment, it's probably Diana. If you hear a snarky comment, it's probably Matt or Don. That's how you can distinguish the 4 of us here who are on the call with you today. So let's jump in on this topic. Matt, this was your idea for a topic. What is your deal with positivity? Why do you hate
your
Philip so
problem
much?
with positivity? Listen, every cloud has a silver lining. I agree with that. I do think I can find something positive about every negative situation. Here's my deal. And I know I'm talking to a certain population of people, certain population of listeners right now that maybe have already gone like, ugh, this session is not for me. Well, hang on just a second. Let me explain why we're talking about what we're talking about, maybe even on a broader scale, just like in the people department. Here's an adage: if everyone is in flat organizations, sometimes we'll work with flat organizations, and they're like, no, everybody is equals, everybody is on the same level here. There's one leader, everybody pride themselves on flat organizations. If everybody is managing everybody, then nobody's managing anybody. If everything is awesome in the world, then awesome is no longer awesome. Do you know what awesome is? Awesome is average. And this is the hard part, I think, that I have with this, because it doesn't matter if you're an employee, a frontline employee, and you're listening to this and you're just going to work. I think there's a takeaway for you. If I'm a manager, trying to manage a group of people, there's a takeaway for you. If I'm an owner, a business leader, there's a takeaway for you. And we're going to cover hopefully all those different takeaways as we go. But that's kind of my baseline. I am all for snarky comments. First of all, thank you, Don. I couldn't have set that up any better myself, but I'm all for finding the positive in things, in people. Sometimes, you know what? Let's just be real. Sometimes life throws you a curveball. Sometimes life is crappy, right? And I'm all for finding that silver lining that we can have, that maybe comes through. And I'm all for helping people find that silver lining. It's just that if that's all I see is the awesome, then maybe I'm blinded towards another part of that. And I'm going to take this to the other extreme, and I'm going to throw it to Diana real quick because we asked Philip to be able to say, share his thought on positivity, but it can go too high to this other term, Diana. You just pointed out this toxic positivity as well. And I will say too, and this is me finding the silver lining, Diana likes to pin herself as the negative one, but lately there's been a shift in Diana. Diana has been much more, I think she just did like a heart-shaped hand thing whenever Philip was talking about his definition of positivity and choosing to have very little information and see the positives. And Diana was, hands raised there in the background. Old Diana is like, 90s Simon Cowell. And new Diana is like 90 or the nowadays Simon Cowell on America's Got Talent. He's just much softer than what he used to be. Does that make sense, Diana? Talk about toxic positivity.
It does make sense. Don't lie to these people. I didn't do any of that stuff. Don't lie.
That's not true. I saw it.
I do think I am a little bit like, I call it Gordon Ramsay because he was like, in the 90s, real mean, and now he's gotten soft. And I just think age softens you a little bit. So I can't wait to see what happens to Philip. I mean, what happens? What's
This
gonna
could be very dangerous, right? Call someone, get a hold of my bank account. Don't let me know about needs anywhere in the world.
It's gonna be so good. I'll help you. I'll protect you. It's gonna be fine. I'm with you. So anyway, yeah, we were talking about this concept of toxic positivity, and it's sort of the like, when you're venting about something or upset about something, and then you have the people that are like, oh, you know what, it could be worse, or really, is it that bad? Or you just need to look on the bright side. And that kind of stuff is sort of frustrating for people who are in a headspace where they just need to feel the feeling, right? They just need to be upset right now. Or when you're sitting around a table and the leader is saying, everything is awesome. And you're looking around and you're like, there's a literal trash can fire over there. Like, things are not awesome. So I think there's a balance to positivity. And I think that's kind of where we're going with it today.
Yeah, ignorance isn't always bliss, right? I mean, sometimes we just need to talk about it. I like how you just said sometimes they just need to feel the feeling. And sometimes they just need to be heard too. Like, I'm in a place where it's not awesome and I need somebody to understand that too. And maybe not try to pick me up, but just hear it. Just hear it for just a second. There's certain types of people that you would want to take shopping on certain days that just tell you everything looks great and you should buy all the things. And then there's other people that you want to take shopping and says, nope, that dress makes you look not great, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain people, I know I'm going to ask them because they're going to give me the real answer, not just the one coded in positivity. And that sometimes is what I need. If I just need to pick me up, I might ask certain other people. If I need somebody to say, tell me I'm crazy, then I might want somebody else to level head me. Does that make sense, Philip?
That's what a psychologist is for. And thank you for those. I think we're talking, it's really easy, I think, to assume that positivity means like just a spin. I could spin. A lot of my education is on how to spin, communication, people. You can make a lot of money spinning because the world doesn't always want to know what's really going on, right? Like, sometimes our job, not at People Centric, I think just in general as human beings, right? We're like, let's not show what's true. I think those examples Don shared too of a CEO that's like, oh, I can't let the people know what is wrong. I won't even acknowledge it, whether it's complete denial or they just don't want people to talk about it because it's shameful or it feels like failure. I think there's a lot of incentives for us to just not do that. But I would say positivity doesn't necessarily have to mean that. And kind of to your point too, Matt, it's like, we've probably all been to a line before, like when there's a funeral, there's like the greeting line, which I think is the strangest place in the world sometimes, when, you're in there and someone will be like, hey, how's it going? How are things, to a family that just lost someone important. 2 weeks ago, I was at one, and it just makes me mad because you're like, you're not honoring this person. You're not honoring the people in front of you. One of our dear friends was literally sobbing as someone came up to hug her. And the reason she started crying then, after a long line of people asking stupid questions like, How's it going? How are the kids? Are they in school? Are they going to Missouri State? Look at the weather. Nice day for, and then they would stop, like, nice day for a funeral. Like, that's not the time to say this, right? The person that started crying, it's because she leaned in and she just said, Angela, we love you, right? And like was there in the moment to not try and assign anything to it other than this is just a terrible time. So I like that we're talking about this because I think sometimes if a CEO does the opposite, it's like being at a funeral line, but saying, look at how great the weather is today.
Yeah, I think you're kind of dancing into the part one of the aspects that I wanted to talk about with this. If I am, first of all, in a situation like that, funeral, that's an extreme moment there, right? And sometimes people don't handle that well, and sometimes people, if I don't like situations like that, I'm going to do something I did not plan on doing, right? I might have had a great plan 3 people ago, and then I get up there and it's like, oh God, I got to get out of this myself, like sometimes we're weird in awkward moments there too. But if I'm that person who is only trying to see the positive, and we can make this work related, if I'm the manager that's only seeing positive, I'm probably conflict is the last thing that I want to engage. One and two, it's not even manager, employee. If I'm a person that only wants to see positive, the conflict is something that I'm probably trying to avoid. And two, it kind of takes away my opportunity to speak critically of that person. And I think, and we can throw this around here, everybody can engage. I think if I don't have the ability to be able to see the other side of that, the critical part that needs to be brought up, I think I'm doing a disservice to the other folks around me. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that as an owner of the company, it is tempting to want your people to be happy all the time because that feels better. That feels better when everybody's happy. There's fewer problems. It's one less problem to deal with. And last thing you want is if you're going into a situation that is challenging. We were talking about before we jumped onto this, like the pandemic, right? The pandemic hit and suddenly everything shut down. Suddenly we're all working from home. And suddenly, like at People Centric, we lost like 30% of our revenue in like 2 days. Like boom, all these companies are saying we have to pause because we don't know what's going to happen next. Now they all came back. Everybody came back and more, which was great. But in that moment, Diana and I were having some conversations like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And what do we tell the team? And there is a temptation of wanting to go to everybody and say, hey, everybody, it's going to be fine. Everybody, it's going to be okay. And we did feel like it would be okay, but we also felt like we needed to say the things that were not good. And so we did lay it out and said, like, guys, this is a pretty serious situation. This could be a little scary. Like, here's what's going on. Here's what's there. And we laid it out for the team. I will say that it was good in that, I was nervous about it because you don't want everybody to feel worse than they already do. But at the same time, it felt a lot better because suddenly you know that you're playing this game with everybody else. Everybody knows what game you're playing. Everybody's on the same page. We all fought our way out of that hole pretty well with everybody engaged with it. And I think that brought us together closer as a team. I think that made the outcome more positive through COVID. I think, but it's really hard in the moment. You don't want to bring it up because you don't want to upset anybody.
Don, I'm gonna add to that. I'm gonna add to that with you. There's another illustration that you have and I don't remember the circumstance. I don't remember what was going on, but there was a moment where you were trying to maintain the positive face with the team, but then you recognized you behind the scenes. You're like, why isn't so-and-so doing this? Why am I having to do this? Why don't they care about this behind the scenes? But out front, it was like, hey, good job. I have the best team. Everything is great. And then you got to this moment of like, why am I the only one frustrated about how things are going right now? But then you kind of had this epiphany of, well, maybe it's because I haven't shared how I'm feeling, or I haven't shared the things that I'm frustrated about. They might not even know there's a frustration because I haven't voiced the frustration. And it's not because everybody needs to be angry or difficult, but you just got to be real every now and again. Sometimes things aren't awesome. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you remember the moment that I'm talking about?
Yeah, and it wasn't even a major moment. It was a minor moment. It was like something, it was over one weekend and it was like on a Sunday or something. And I was working on something and I was like, man, we've got this issue or whatever it was. I don't remember what the issue was, but I started getting mad at you guys. I started like actually getting angry. Diana, you remember this one?
I do remember this. I do. You were doing a bunch of stuff like getting ready for the great game, and you were working on the weekend, like building out the forecast and doing all of this stuff. I totally remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was getting really angry. Like, I'm like, well, I'm doing this and I got to get everybody on board with this. And while everybody else is taking the weekend off and I got to get this all ready. And then finally there was just a moment. I don't know what triggered the moment. I don't know if I maybe I texted Diana. I'm not very good at remembering some of this stuff. Maybe that's why Diana remembers this. Diana, you're nodding. Did I reach out to you and say, why does nobody else care about this or something?
It wasn't that you texted something that was not totally harsh, but like not normal. And so it did rate. I remember it being like, oh, this is a red flag. Don's mad. Don is upset about, and I don't understand it.
Yeah. So I think at the end of that day, I've realized, why am I carrying this load and pissed off at everybody when I haven't asked anybody else to help me carry the load? It's like I think about, like, if you're home and your spouse brings in the groceries or something and you're watching the game and you're just focused on the game and you forget to even watch, and your spouse gets mad at you because they're carrying the groceries by themselves and you're not helping them. Well, they never ask for help. Like, you would stop, okay, I'll pause this and help get and watch the game, or you wait for 3 minutes while this game's over and then I'll help you, right? There's lots of options on the table, but if that never comes up. And so I think I went to the team and asked for help, I think is what happened. I think the team absolutely like circled up on that Sunday afternoon and said, okay, yeah, let's figure this out.
Yeah. I think I just texted you back and was like, well, I'm more than willing to do something. You just have to let us know what you need. Like, I think it was just like, I don't know what you need. You haven't said.
I think we could take this to the next step too of that conversation and say, let's look and see. Let's use Don as a case study, shall we? And let's say Don didn't say anything, and Don, we won't call him Don, we'll call him Lon. Lon shows up for work on Monday. What type of mood is Lon in on Monday, right? The employees are walking into a hornet's nest, and they have no idea that they're walking into a hornet's nest because Lon had, been frustrated about this the entire weekend. So I think here's a next level to this of why this is important to also be able to see both sides of that, because Don took it upon himself to say, you know what, dang it, I've reached this point of frustration, but maybe I don't have to be frustrated on my own. Maybe I don't have to be carrying the load all by myself. And so he reached this moment. If he had not, it would have just, you can imagine the anxiety, the stress, the frustration, heads are going to roll, that type of thing, because people don't care. And all of a sudden now we're into this assigning intent and all of that stuff. And we have labeled our people as maybe disruptive, not helpful. Maybe one of the reasons that you decided not to ask people up front is because initially you thought, I want to protect them. It started out as noble, right? I want to protect them. This is my job. I don't want to burden them. Let me take this on. When in reality, and Don, you've done this to us a few times, to where you've shared some things that might have been difficult. And honestly, I would like to think, and this is me, there is a positive side to it. I would like to think that the moment that you shared that with the team is like, why didn't you just tell us earlier? Like, why didn't you bring that up? In fact, if you shield it and then it doesn't come up until later, now all of a sudden the people are thinking, why didn't you trust us to be able to share that information in the first place? And this is where you get to it. No. You're trying to defend it. It wasn't a lack of trust. It was, I just thought I needed to do it. But that's different than how the people are going to read that lack of transparency, which again, the lack of transparency is because you're trying not to see the other side of the positivity there, but it's not always positive. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Don, but
no, you did a lot there, Matt.
Thank you.
You just did it a lot.
But, anyway, that's Don's thoughts. What's next?
Well,
I thought those were Jan's thoughts.
Lon's thoughts, not Don's thoughts. Protect the names of the innocent here. It strikes me that when we see, and I'm going to kick this over to like clients and people we've worked with too, but it's probably true for us as well, is that whenever we see a period of false positivity, it's often followed by a period of real negativity. So if somebody's saying like, no, I'm just going to be positive and I'm going to fight through this and I'm going to kind of hide this from the team, a lot of times what happens is it backfires and comes back around and ends up being the owner just gets really frustrated or the team gets really frustrated. And you're right. And by both sides, because it's like, oh, you didn't tell us that, so you must not trust us. And it's that lack of trust. So I mean, it makes me think like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Well, the other day I had a client who said like, oh, this employee that I have is really bothering me. Her attitude sucks. She was doing all these things. And I was like, well, have you addressed it with her? And she said, no, I'm just going to kill it with kindness. And I was like, it's never going to work. It's not going to work. So we had a conversation about like why that doesn't work and why that's not been working and how to shift it. And she was like, well, I don't want to make her feel bad. Right. And so it was this weird, like she wanted it to be positive. And I was like, but it's not positive. Like And that's okay. You can do it kindly and well without it being positive. You still have to share the negative. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I am
it's kind of like
curious.
that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I am curious, like, when do we think positivity is a good play and when is it a bad play? When is it like, okay, well, you should just say, okay, listen, you're heading in the right direction, but we can do a little bit better? Or when do you Simon Cowell it and say, you are terrible?
I think one of the thing our team talks a lot about the difference of blame and accountability. And I think accountability has built in, again, this is me probably putting words into Matt's mouth that aren't his words. So maybe they're just my words. The difference between like you're just great the way you are and nothing needs to change, as opposed to there like newsflash, there are challenges here. Matt and I actually coach Matt's without too much positive. Oh no, I'm getting stuck in my own strength. Matt is decent at some things, and that includes sometimes being in front of people. I'll just put it that way. And sometimes I'm decent, but I want to be more decent. And so Matt gives great advice and insight on how to do that. And I appreciate it because it's not just hey, wow, you're amazing as it is. Because there's like a difference, and certain people do different things. And you're like, I want to do more of that, and comparison can be the thief of joy, but comparison can also be something that makes you better. So I think when it comes to this idea of like, what does positively look like in a setting where you're not inclined to talk about this well, and I think a lot of managers don't know how because they think it comes across as condescending or bad or saying someone's a failure and it leads to conflict. I think it's how you do it. If it's you're just a terrible person, you're just a great person, that's a blame, that's a blame statement. It's based on you as opposed to accountability, which is, but we can change this, we can grow, we can move in the direction we need to. And why it's different, like the Lonnie example of earlier, if you come in and you're like, this is a terrible team, but I'm just going to say they're great until I blow up at them versus, hey team, here's a problem. Like, I actually need your help and we're going to do this and move forward. I think it's a momentum thing. Like, where does it take you is the difference between are we building more alignment or just speaking a false reality?
Yeah. And I think that if you're being honest about something, it's not all bad, right? I think that's the thing. It's probably not all bad all of the time. So there is some good things and then there are some bad things. And I think being honest about when the things are good and then when the things are bad is so much better than it's always good or it's always bad. I think people appreciate when you can recognize both of those things. Like, I think it's helpful when you can look at someone and be like, listen, here's the challenge that I have, and here's what's wrong. But I think that your strength of this and this can really help you leverage this and fix that problem, right? I think people are more understanding and more willing to hear things when it's a balance of both.
Yeah, it's a finesse. Like I like the word finesse in management. I think that's a word that doesn't get used a lot. There's a finesse to these things. It's not a lever. We like levers. We like to like, I'll always be positive. And then it's like we're saying, well, don't always be positive. You're like, great. I will always be realistic and negative on things. It's like, no. There's a right moment. I think it's you meet people where they are and you understand, but then you reflect the reality to them, but then you be hopeful. I like that Philip linked positivity with hope. Right? There should be hope at the end of the day. That's one of the things that Gallup says that followers need from their leaders. We did a whole podcast episode about that a couple of years ago. We need that hope. So yeah, it's okay to say, yes, this is not working. This is not good. And we're judging the thing, not the person. We're saying this is the thing that you're doing is not good. You are not a good singer. You're not singing well. You can sing, but whatever the thing is, but then you can offer some hope and say, but here's the pivot. And maybe here's the things that we can do maybe to be successful moving forward.
Yeah, communication, we talk about this a lot, but communication is one of the number one things that organizations reach out to us for help on, right? So many different communication tools. We have so much more access to people than ever before. Why is it still one of the number one things that people need help with? And I think the thing that rises to the top with communication, because communication is very, very general. It's huge. You're never going to solve all the communication issues, but I think the little subheading, the bullet point under communication that people struggle with most is transparency. And this idea of transparency, tell them what you can tell them. And it doesn't have to be positive. Every room I go into when I'm speaking at a conference, and if I ask them, how many of you want to know if you're doing a good job at work in your manager's eyes? 100% of the people raise their hand. If I say, how many of you want to know if you're not doing a good job in your manager's eyes? 100% of the people raise their hand, right? It's not that we don't want to hear the negative. Maybe don't If you're just always negative, yeah, I just keep it real all the time. Okay, then maybe that's the lever that we need to pull back a little bit. There are positives, but there's another side of this too, and your folks know when you're pandering to them. I used this as an example earlier. Maybe this is an example that hits home for some of you. Maybe you have some people within your organization that have tried to apply for different leadership positions, managerial positions, promotions, maybe transfer to other departments, and maybe there was a pool of people that they were going against to be able to apply for, and maybe they didn't get it. So they've got to go back to work, which they're probably okay with. There was a lot of people, maybe they're frustrated about it, maybe they're a little sad about it, but they're okay with going back to the job that they had. The closing the loop, the transparency part is I have to be prepared and be able to tell people why they didn't get it versus somebody else. And if not, dang it, you're doing a disservice to yourself, and you're doing a disservice to the company, and you're doing a disservice to that person that put themselves out there on a limb to be able to apply for that position in the first place. There's a reason I didn't get it, and I just want to know what the reason is. Not because then I can say that's not true, but so I can potentially work on something. Dang, I loved it whenever people would hear that feedback and they would say, this is why somebody else got it over you. And then you know what that person did? That person would go back and they would work on it, and they would come back and say, I heard that feedback last time, and this is what I did to try to remedy that. And that's why I'm here again applying for it. Golly, I loved it. I loved those people that did that versus the other people that are like, well, that's on you, not on me. They misread that. I'm just going to go back to keep doing what I'm doing because Janice says I'm awesome, and that's a you problem, not a me problem. Well, Janice is lying to you. Janice is lying to you, right? I understand why we want to have people like that in our lives, but I also need that balance of transparency that we were just talking about there too. There's an emotional intelligence piece to this as well. What if I'm just an employee? I don't care what level it is, and I'm an employee at an organization, and I'm going, what if I feel like I've already climb the mountain, right? What if I feel like I have made it to the top and I already know all the things I need to do. They're not hiring me because it's a them problem, not a me problem. And I will say in some circumstances, I could see maybe you just work for an organization that's not the best at making those decisions. But what if I'm that person? And what if they come to you, Diana, and they're going, you know what? I have done everything that I think I need to be able to do that. I was as qualified as Cliff that was doing that job before, and they just don't hire me because they don't like me. What's the emotional intelligence piece that maybe you can help them see in that moment? Anyone? I know I said Diana, but I'll open it to anyone.
I think my question would be, well, and I don't know, that we always talk about meeting people where they are. If someone's not able to listen, and that's kind of the point I think you're sharing, Matt, if the rose-colored glasses are theirs, maybe like how much are you actually paying attention or listening to the people around you? The emotional intelligence would say, like, is there a common denominator if I've tried multiple times and it's not just one person that has turned me down, it's multiple? Then it's actually telling me something. So I should listen, and that'll actually lead to my growth. Like there is something missing, and it's in me.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, part of the emotional intelligence part is understanding. Let's take an evaluation of you. What are you bringing to the table? What are your gaps? What are the things that maybe you're transparently not good? What are the things that maybe you haven't yet climbed the mountain on that you maybe need to try to achieve if you're looking to take the next level? I mean, I think that's where the growth part, listening is the first step of that. Action is the second step of that, right? But to bring it back to the topic is, if I'm only able to see the positive side of that, I'm missing a whole nother opportunity of growth and feedback and development that's probably hindering you and the team and the entire, the organization, depending on the organization of what that might be. So again, I don't know which other direction you want to go, but we're saying positivity is great. We need to have positivity, but we also need to have another side of that coin too. And if you're listening to this and you're Philip's friend, you should know you're awesome. You're amazing, because that's only who Philip associates with, is amazing, awesome people. And so if you have made that list, then then you're, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. You probably are awesome. You probably are amazing. Bring a lot of things to the table. But what I'm saying is, there's got to be another side to this coin too. Not that we want to dwell on it, but if I choose to avoid it, that's a whole nother problem. That's a whole other problem, but that's probably stifling growth and probably stifling team as well in that situation too. So what other thoughts or things would you all add to this before we move to wrap up?
I think that Don said the question, like, when do you Simon Cowell it? And I do think there is that moment, right? We're talking about positivity, but I do think there's a moment where you're like, no, this just isn't working. Like, it's not, there's nothing good about this thing. Like, you just need to hear that this is bad so that we can hopefully fix it, right?
It's
So
bad and you're bad are two different things, right?
yeah, that's
I just thought of that, but it's bad. I'm not saying you're bad. I'm saying this situation is bad, and we have to figure that out too. That's a
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Simon does it when somebody is trying out on a national television show to perform when they clearly are not close to that standard of being able to perform. That's when he says it. So I do think there's moments where you have to, the shock therapy, so to speak, of saying, this is, you're not hearing me. This is definitely 1,000% not working. And we've had moments like that with clients before where we sit down and say, if we don't address this, your future is in jeopardy, or this person's going to leave, or this is going to, something really bad's going to happen. You have to have those moments. And sometimes you have to have those moments with people that you really care about. And it might really hurt in those moments to say, this is the reality of the situation. And I'm sorry that that's where it's at. This is not where I wanted to be. This is not where you wanted to be, but it's where we're at right now.
And then I do think, like we were saying, there's a balance. I think there is a time where you say only positive things and nothing negative, right? I think there are those moments too. Like, no, for now, I'm just going to tell you all the positive things and we're not going to look at the negative right now. I think there are those moments where you have to do that. And that's where the study of people and communication and emotional intelligence and meeting people where they are and reading a room, like all of those things come together so that when do you need to just be positive? When do you need to just be negative? And when do you need to have the balance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I like the balance thought. Can I share one more illustration of an organization, Don, that just popped into my head, and I think this is going to be good, and then we're going to go. So this is an illustration. I won't say who it is or the client that it is, anything like that. But we do work with some folks who are like, everything is great, and they keep us kind of at an arm's distance. Everything is great. Everything is wonderful. You don't even need to check over there because it's awesome, and this is the growth, and this is the money, and this is la 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 la, and that's great. But so far, who we've heard from at that moment is the top leadership of the organization. And we had an instance to where not too awful long ago, and again, I'm going to protect the innocent, where we finally heard the first chink in the armor. We finally heard the first, it's not as awesome here as what they're painting it to be. Like, we heard words like conflict on a team, and it was a difficult situation. That's the first time we've heard that. But you know what? In that moment, that was the best opportunity for us to be able to help them grow in the direction that they ultimately wanted us to help them grow in. I've got to be able to see the other side of that in order to be able to help take steps. And this is an individual perspective too. You've got to be able to see the things that maybe I do well, the things that maybe I don't do well, take that with a grain of salt. Do I need to do something different, or I'm okay not doing that? And because I don't want to achieve this, I want to go this way. And I don't know, maybe it's a self-inventory thing for you too. So hopefully, no matter what role you play within the organization, hopefully you heard something that you can take away from this. You can take something away from this. Don't be that person that goes out to dinner with your friend, and then that friend goes to the bathroom and they realize they had lettuce stuck in their teeth, but you were with them for the last 2 hours and you couldn't even point it out. You know what I mean? Don't be that friend. Like, just say it. Just say it.
Very good example.
Yeah. And when Don talked about American Idol, you know why? There's 2 reasons that person got on that stage anyway. 1, because they knew they were awful and it was going to be awesome. Or 2, they were surrounded by a bunch of people who told them, you're great, you should go on American Idol. And then you showed up and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they went to American Idol, right? I can't believe this is going to be awful. But you set them up for failure, right? So see the awesome side, but also be truthful enough and transparent enough to be able to see the other side of that too, because that's where growth happens anyway. So hopefully you've taken something away from this. If you have questions about it or want to share it with your friend, then that's great. Maybe this is that episode that you're like, hey, just came across this podcast. I think you should listen to it. It's awesome. They're fantastic. You can build us up, but you're hoping they take something away from it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's this episode for you. So feel free to share it with your friends. Give us feedback or topic ideas, whatever. We'd love that. And you know what, you guys, you're all awesome most days. And just take that with a grain of salt. So till next time, everybody. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.